Hey there and welcome back to the last of remaking Vampire Survivors in GameMaker. This will be the 11th and of course, as promised last time, the last part, which is then doing the XP system and then of course the pop up, pop down menu, pseudo menu, whatever you want to call it. And for example, if we select one of those things, we can upgrade our internal damage parameters. This is basically what we do. For that we need to do tons of things, and for example we need to block a lot of things. We need to block the player, the spawning, the enemies, the collecting, and therefore tons of things. And then we need to set up the whole pop-up thing, which will take at least 25 minutes, so I apologize in advance. This will be a long video. I know I already messed it up once. So bear with me in this regard. So if you want to join me on this small little journey and you want to know how to do that in GameMaker, then stick around. This is OneUp Indie. I am a developer, so if you like what you're seeing and hearing, then why not consider sharing, liking and subscribing to the channel, of course. Alright, so here a quick preview what's actually happening. So basically what we did last time is just collecting those coins and nothing would be happening. And now we got an XP system, so we got XP and then an XP next level thing, so two variables. And then for example, once we're hitting, let's say 4, then we're just saying like, hey cool, let's do a level up, and then these object upgrade things, there will be 3 of them just coming bouncing down, and then we need to block tons of things. So first of all, the XP system, which is then upgrading also the next levels. Of the first time it will be 4 coins need to be collected for an upgrade, then 5, then 6, then 7, and of course you can mix and match the way you like, so more or less, but this is then of course dynamically scaling upwards, so the progression will be a little bit harder to get by. And then of course the next thing is, first of all, block our dude from walking. We need to block our weapons from spawning. We need to block from the enemies being spawned. So for example, that would be kind of ridiculous if you could just spawn each time more and more enemies while the pop-up is there, so this is not good. Then of course we need to kind of simulate that the enemies are not walking towards you, so we need to cancel their animation and then of course cancel their speed going towards the player, and therefore tons of things which we need to do in advance. And then of course the last thing is then setting up the whole bounciness, which we do with an animation curve. And then we need to have some states. So the first state which will be popping in within it, and then it stays idle. Then we can click on it and upgrade one of our values, and then we kind of tint it a little bit, so see orange or whatever, so we know like, hey, we selected that, and then we do the reverse bouncing upwards back out of that. And then once this thing is gone, everything's getting unblocked. So this is the whole idea behind it. Tons of things, not too terribly difficult, but this is of course time consuming. So let's go into our project and do the XP system. So let's go and do this and this. Tons of things which we are doing here. So the first thing which we need to do is establish an XP system, because for now we're just destroying the coins. So let's go in here. I already have those variables, my bad. So that's what I wanted to show you. Copy paste, then XP and XP next as 2 variables, and this value is getting updated. So let's do this. So for example, once we are collecting a coin, we're doing this, we are just upgrading it by 1, so plus 1, so for each coin. And then we're just checking like, hey, if our XP is bigger or equals, but just will be equals all the time. This is just a failsafe for me. Then what we do, well, first of all we nullify our XP so we can start afresh. And of course we need to upgrade our next, which has the value of 4 at the start, but now we're just updating it by 1. Now come on, let's do it faster like this. Here we go, advanced users, yay. And then of course we need to create an instance which is then blocking everything which we haven't created now. So this one will be the upgrade thing which is coming downwards, so object upgrade, and then we want to create it once we have a level up. So let's actually do this, and then we just say like, hey, I don't know, 0, 0 for now. The numbers are not too important, just that you know, hey, we are creating an upgrade, and this thing will kind of block tons of things, so there will be tons of checks. Here I use depth, so it will be definitely on top of everything. So we can actually use and check a few things. So first of all, let's go into our player and go into the step event. So we just say like, hey, if an instance exists, so if one of those upgrade, because we will spawn 3 of those, exist, then exit. Exit just means, hey, all the code after that is getting ignored, which is great. So this is how we block things. Then of course, this is not good enough for us. First of all, we need to block a lot of other things. So for example, if we don't want to collect more coins because now we want to kind of block it, then they will still fly towards the player. But the good part is, once we are getting rid of our upgrade, once it's going away, then we can collect again new coins and then have new upgrades. So this is how the blocking works. And of course there's more blocking to do. Let's go to the player. So this is what we did for our user events. For example, for the slash, hey, do we want to create new slashes? If the upgrade is there, no. For the hammer also, for the firewall, and as you can see, this is how it works. This will not block, for example, once we are creating one of those guys in the air, but then we just take that as a collateral. So they will just spawn and they will destroy enemies and so on. So here we cannot do a lot of things, but this is good enough for us. And then the next thing is we need to, for example, the spawning. Well, do we want to spawn enemies? No. And then here, a little bit of a tricky thing, we cannot just put that here, because now we would break the loop because everything is getting ignored. So here we are not looping anymore. So we need to put that on top. Here we go. No, not like this. And then, for example, for collecting, no. For spawning, no. For updating our enemies, also here, this would be kind of tragic because we want it to do it a little bit different. And first of all, we would break the loop. This is not what we want. So we just say like, hey, if the instance exists, so if our update is there, what do we do? Well, first of all, we just say like, hey, our speed is 0 and this thing will still loop, but just say like all the time, override it and set it to 0 so the enemy cannot walk into our direction. And of course, image speed, here we go, we set it to 0. Why do we do that? So the enemy won't be animating, which is pretty good. And of course here, image speed 1 as a resetter. So once again, this is just for us visually, so everything is getting visually blocked, which it is not because we're technically looping all the time this thing here, but we don't want the enemies to first of all walk and then second of all to animate, so it looks like everything is frozen. As you can see now, I'm just trying to move, which is good. So no enemies are being spawned. Enemies cannot go because they image their speed, and their image animation speed is also 0. So once again, this looks like everything's frozen. We could maybe do that for the player, but let's forget about that. Do we want to do that? Not really. Let's actually do this. So image speed set to 0. And then, yeah, maybe in the step event, here we go, image speed is set to 0, but for example, normally it's set to 1, so we got a neat reset here. And now, once we blocked everything, we can actually go into the meat and the potatoes of the whole thing, because this is where we want to customize it. So first of all, we need to give it one of those 3 sprites. So here, the fireball or the hammer or the slash, and that is happening in our player. So away, and here we do that, for example, once we got our well, level up. so for the XP system. And here I will just copy paste a few things because I'm kind of lazy. First of all, we want to get the center position in the screen. Not recommended, by the way, but this is the cheap man's way how to do that. So we're gonna do it. And then we define two variables, so the center X position and center Y position. So we're just grabbing the camera, this dude here, and then the center point here with the camera width divided by half. So we're getting always the correct position where to go. And then we want to put these guys in there. So this is pretty good for us. And of course we want to do a little bit more. So first of all, we want to establish that they have a fixed center position where they want to land. For that we define a variable which I call destination. Do I call it like this? Yes, I call it like this, destination Y. And this is a pass-in variable which we'll later on change once we are spawning these guys in here. And then we're just saying like, hey, this is where we want to land in the end. Very, very important. And of course, we start with image alpha of 0. Why do I do this? Because I want to abuse the system that, for example, it's not just flashing one step and then it's gone. We want to update it once and then it will start up here and not here where we are actually spawning it at the very, very, very first step. You will see that in a few seconds. So let's go into our object player because now that would be happening. So for that we just come on, let's copy paste that because I'm kind of lazy in this regard. So what do? Well, we store it into a variable, so for example a, b, or whatever. For our instance, say like, hey, your destination is the middle center point, which is good. And then we say image alpha of 1. This means that the image alpha of 1 will be 1 step plus. So not instantly, but so for example, if you want to do some instant stuff, this is side content, you would have to do something like this. This is only possible in the newest update, by the way, the most hated one. So here, that would mean it's instantly set to 1. But we're not going to do this. We will abuse the delay of 1 step in this regard. And of course then we just pass in one of those 3 sprites, and then of course we can do that 3 times. So copy paste, do that 3 times, so we're ABC, and just give it different kind of sprites. And from the center position we just go minus 35 upwards and 35 pixels downwards. Why 35 pixels? Well, because these guys are 33 pixels. They have 33 pixels of a height, and therefore we got a buffer of 2 pixels in between both of those. And then we could be finished with this part. So for example, the player has done its job in this regard by blocking and just creating, well, those upgrades. And now we need to kind of define a few things. So first of all, we want to have a state, which is kind of important for us. So we can pop in and pop out, or which is just, well, short for me, that we are going in and out. And then what do we want to do is use the bounciness of our thing, which we want to have pop in, and use an animation curve. Animation curve is a little bit wonky to use, but pretty sweet. So animation curve here, create, call it, how did I call your, no, not like this. Huh? I do that correctly? Yes, I am. So here once again, and then this is pretty empty. So what we want to do is have a start point of 200. But of course you can go with different values if you like. So for example, if your room is a little bit bigger, then just play around with those, and then you see a linear between 200 as a start value and ending up with 0. This is where we want to go. And of course, make this a little bit more interesting. For that we just use bounce. And then we will go along with the horizontal values, which starting with 0. This will be percentage base, so and then we end up as a value of 1. So we just need to upgrade the x value here to get our Y values, which are those guys here in the bounciness. So what do? Well, we need to grab first of all the animation curve and store it into a variable. So animation curve get channel. So here this is this one, and then this would be the first one indexed as 0, or you can just go in and then curve 1, I guess it's called curve 1 or something like this, but I guess 0 is easier. So first one, yay. And then we need a percentage value which is starting at 0, and then we can go along the x-axis, so the horizontal, and then I get Y values assigned. Then we need to create this kind of bounciness, and for that we just say like, hey, are we popping in? So this is the first part. Then we want to update our Y position with our destination Y plus a value which I call position. You can call it whatever you like, and this thing is getting, well, from our curve which we stored and the percentage which we want to update it. So here we just minusing, and at the very beginning, come on, minus, it will be minus 200, and then it will at some point, once we're updating the percentage value which is starting at 0, and then it will go to 0 also, and then we can have it as fast as we like. I guess, I don't know, 2 seconds is pretty good, but let's go with 90. This is a pretty neat thing. So for example, in 90 steps we reach the last point, and then we can say like, hey, have we reached the last point? So if we reached bigger or equal to 1, then we set it to 1 as a default value, and then of course we can say like, hey, we reached the point which we want to have. So basically we are in the center. Then we say like, hey, idle, sweet. So this state is then also being used for us when, for example, when we are clicking with our mouse. So we are releasing the left mouse button, and then boom, we say like, hey, are we idle? So can we click on one of those guys? Then what can we do? Well, we set it to our last state, which I called go away. So this is just so it sounds a little bit nicer, and then we can basically do the same part as here, but do the reverse version. So there will be a bouncing and negative bouncing, because remember our percentage value is now 1. So what we can do is minus the value. Let's go with 1 second because we want to go with faster, and then we can basically do the same part here, and then this 0 position value will be at the start 0, and then it will go upwards to, what was it, 200, which we want. And then of course we say like, hey, once we reduce the position, the percent, I mean, good enough for us, then we just destroy the instance and all of those guys are gone. That means also everybody is free to do again what they want. So basically the player is unblocked, the spawning is unblocked, we can spawn weapons and so on. And this is how the whole system works. And then, well, that should be good enough, but of course this isn't working too perfectly for now, but it does work. So let's check this out. As you can see, it's coming down with this bounciness, which is pretty cool. Then we're pressing on one of those guys, and this guy is just gone. This is of course bad because we still have one of object upgrades in the room, and then everything is getting still blocked. So what do? Well, we use the go away state for all of them, and that means of course if we give them all the same state, you cannot click on 2, which is good. So this is what we want to do. And of course, image blend, here we go, see orange, and then we can actually see the one which we selected. Then the last thing which we're going to do is upgrade one of our stats. So let's actually do this. Come on, collect. And then for example we press on the, I don't know, the hammer, and everything is gone. And as you can see, everything is getting resetted, so we're getting more instances being spawned, and now once again everything is getting blocked. And this is how the system works. So let's go to the last part, which is, if you remembered, I stored here those damage values which are getting grabbed and passed into the weapons which we are spawning, and we want to upgrade them. And depending what kind of sprite we're using, for example in our object upgrade, so for example if we're using this one, then we want to upgrade in the player's damage fireball. So for that, a little bit of copy pasting from my side also, because I'm lazy. Yes, I am lazy in this kind of regard. You don't want to see me all the time doing the same shenanigans, not you, the object upgrade. So once we have pressed, we're just checking like, hey, what kind of sprite index is our object update having? So the pop-up thing. So is it the slash, then sweet, update the slash plus equals to 3, because I guess the slash needs more damage. I'll just go with 1 for all. Doesn't really matter. And this is how you can build and expand the whole system all over. Alrighty, so if you are still listening to me, congratulations, you made it to the very final end. And this is the last part. There was just a quick notation from my side. There was the idea to have not just the direction and speed as a correction value. So for example, in our update, so if you're updating the enemy, then you're just giving it a new direction and the speed value. And then somebody said like, hey, why don't we use the MP function? This is technically possible, so they would even bounce off each other, which is pretty sweet, by the way. But we come to a little problem, because they have all collision events also, which is pretty much breaking or making the game extremely sluggish and slow at some point. So after a few hundred instances, this is pretty terrible. So it would be cool, but sadly it's not working like intended, and therefore I cannot recommend it. Of course you can do that with just, I don't know, 50 instances or whatever, then it's pretty sweet. But if you have a few thousands, and this is working with a few thousands, I checked it out, it does work, then well, better do this system, which is very performative. And of course, just a quick thing for all my patrons, or for the guys on itch.io which invested in this project here, there will be a download for the current version and a small upgraded version, of course, as a big thank you that you supported this project, system, whatever. And then you will get the, in quotations, a little bit upgraded as a download also. So just don't be a little bit like, huh, what's happening? Well, you are getting two versions. First of all, the one which you're seeing in front of you, and of course one which is a little bit more refined, just a few extras to the flow of that thing. Alrighty, that was it from my side. Have a good one. One up indie.